Alright students, so we are now going to start with the next chapter of biology as absorption by roots. So here is the next chapter named as the absorption by roots. In this chapter, we'll discuss how the roots absorbs the water from the soil and then rise of water by xylem. Now we know that the water and the mineral transport is done by xylem, which is a vascular bundle in plants, and the food distribution is done by phloem. So in this part, we'll only be discussing about the xylem, that is the absorption by roots and the rise of water by xylem. Before actually starting with this concept, there is some terminologies that we'll have to discuss. So here we'll discuss some terminologies, or we can say some terms and their significance and importance, and then we'll discuss how they can be applicable in this chapter. Alright, so the very first terminology is imbibition. It can also be pronounced as imbibition or imbibition. In this part, or what is the definition? It is the process of adsorption. This is the process of adsorption. Adsorption means the water molecule, they are just being adsorbed. That is, they are not absorbed, they are just present on the surface of the substance, and that is what is meant by adsorption. It is not up to the core of the substance, it is only up to the surface. So the process of adsorption of the water molecules by colloidal substances. The process of absorption of the water molecules by the colloidal substances, it is known as imbibition. Here the important thing is the adsorption, that is, this is just the surface phenomena. The water is not absorbed to the core, it is just being present on the surface of the material. And the colloidal substances. Now, what are the colloidal substances? Here we will be taking the case of starch, then we'll be taking of the cellulose. Alright, so starch, cellulose, these are all, or carbohydrates. Let me write it that also. Carbohydrates, starch and cellulose, these are all the colloidal substances, and these substances will adsorb the water molecules. Alright, and that process is known as imbibition. Now, this process of imbibition in our daily life is as during the rainy season, we see that the wooden doors, they swell. They get swelled up. Now, how can we know they are swelling up? Because when we try to close the door, it is unable to be closed because that swelling has occurred and it will not fit into the size of the thing where it has to fit. Alright, so that is why the wooden doors, it gets swell up, because the wood is also a colloidal substance and it will absorb the water molecules and it thus gets swollen. Alright, or it just swells. So that is why during that rainy season it is difficult to close that wooden door, because it swells up by the process of imbibition. Now, in biology, what is the significance of this imbibition? Here we will be talking of the significance. In the significance part of the imbibition, the first significance is that it helps in breaking the seed coat. It helps in breaking the seed coat. Alright, we know that for germination, the seed coat has to be removed, only then the formation of the plumule or we can say shoot or root, radical and plumule, that will be taking place. So it helps in breaking the seed coat. Now, how is that process going to happen? When that, you would say, a seed, it absorbs the water molecule, it gets swell up, so it means it is growing in size. While growing inside, the seed coat will not be able to grow, and that is why it just bursts out. Alright, so it helps in breaking the seed coat. Now, let me tell you the one more explanation of this, and then we'll write down the other significance. See, if this is the rock, a big rock, and there is a presence of seed between the crack, then during the rainy season, what will be going to happen? The surface molecule will absorb this water of that rain and it gets swelled up. So during that swelling, what is going to happen? It will apply the pressure on the sides of the crack because it is now swelling up. So it will apply the pressure on the sides and it will help in breaking that rock. So on the geology point of view, it helps in weathering of rocks. So it helps in weathering of rocks. Now, the third thing is the plant cell, the surface, or we can say the membrane, that is the outside membrane, this is made up of cellulose. Now, this cellulose is also a colloidal substance as we have talked of here. The cellulose is a colloidal substance. It will absorb the water and it will pass on that absorbed water cell to cell. So it helps in transfer of, let me write down here. So it will help in cell to cell transfer of water. So cell to cell transfer of water, it is also made possible with this process of imbibition. So imbibition, there will be the pressure generation which will cause the weathering of the rock and help in breaking the seed coat. Weathering of rock, seed coat, and because it is being absorbed by the outside membrane of the plant cell which is made up of cellulose, so it means it helps in cell to cell transfer of water. We'll name what is this phenomena called later on when we'll talk of the absorption. So this is the first term known as the imbibition, which is just the absorption of the water molecules by the colloidal substances like starch, cellulose or carbohydrates. Now, the next thing that we'll be talking about in this part only, terminology part, is diffusion. Alright, students, so the next part is diffusion. So what basically is the diffusion is? Very, very important thing. Diffusion is the process of movement of the molecules of a substance from the region of its higher concentration to its lower concentration. So this is the process of movement of the molecules of the substance. The molecules of the substance is moving from the region of its higher concentration, means the higher concentration of the molecules of the substance, to its lower concentration. So it is basically from the higher concentration to lower concentration. But a very important thing is without semi-permeable membrane. Without semi-permeable membrane. There is no any such membrane which will allow or which will not allow the molecules to move across it. So diffusion, it takes place in the absence of any of the membrane. So if we are talking of the movement of the molecules from higher concentration to lower concentration without any membrane, then that process is known as diffusion. In diffusion, substance could be any. It could be solute also. It could be solvent or even gases. Alright. So diffusion is a process of movement of the molecules of a substance. The substance could be solute, solvent or gases from the region of its higher concentration, where either solute is high, solvent is high or gases is high, to its lower concentration, that is lower concentration of solute, solvent and gases without any semi-permeable membrane. So it means here we will not talk about any of the semi-permeable membranes. Alright. So this is the movement of the any particles. So if we'll have to take the example, this is very same. If the perfume is sprayed, if a perfume is sprayed on the one corner of the room, then its fragrance is spread to all over the room. That is, that one corner of the room is the region of high concentration where that smell or the fragrance is at the higher concentration. Now all the other room except for that corner is the region of the lower concentration, so it will be moving from its higher concentration to the lower concentration and there is no membrane controlling the movement. So that process is known as diffusion. Alright, so here let us talk about its significance. Now significance is, since the flowers they are also having a particular fragrance, so it will have to attract the insects through that fragrance, and it is also possible due to diffusion. So first is to attract the insects, and what is the further on result of this? Pollination. So first is it will help us to attract the insects towards itself. The second significance is the loss of water by transpiration, that also occurs due to the process of diffusion. So loss of water from stomata, that is also possible due to diffusion. Next, third thing is the exchange of gases. Exchange of gases, that is the intake of carbon dioxide and the outlet of the oxygen, that is also being possible due to the process of diffusion. Alright, so this is the most common significances of the process of diffusion, but the main thing that we'll have to remember is that it is without the semi-permeable membrane, and it is possible for any of the substance. It could either be a solute, solvent, or even a gas, but without a semi-permeable membrane and from a region of its higher concentration to its lower concentration. Alright, so this is about the diffusion, and these are the significance: to attract the insects, loss of water from stomata, that process is transpiration, and the exchange of gases like carbon dioxide and oxygen. Alright, so this was all about the diffusion. In the next part, we'll start with osmosis.